Uh, Good morning, everyone. It's so nice to see everybody's face and hear their voices, especially in this season. I'm Colin Wellenkamp. I'm the Executive Director of the Mississippi River Cities and Towns Initiative. I see we have one of our close partners from FEMA on the line, Eric Letvin, who has been with us for several years now, been a trusted partner, sort of kept us on the path here, and we've been very grateful for that. And Eric was telling me, if I could share with them, Eric, if it's okay, you're telling me the other day that the last live meeting you had was when you spoke to us back in March of 2020.
Yeah, I remember that being up on, it was a very nice room we had there. We had lunch, and I think I gave the speech to you all. And I remember being a little bit nervous about COVID because it was about a week or two, if I remember, Colin, before pretty much everything shut down. And I think that was the last, live meeting I had with partners. And actually, I guess we learned after the fact that there was actually COVID on the Hill when we were, maybe not in our building, but up on the Hill in general. There were staffers that had it. But yeah, that was the last meeting I had was with you all. It's a pleasure to be here again today.
Thank you. And yeah, we sort of snuck that meeting in right under the wire. Everything shut down right when we got back. So that was fortunate we were able to get that in. Mayor Kraft and Representative Shaul, I'm going to hand it off to you to get us started and just say thank you, everyone, for joining us, and good morning.
Okay, thank you very much, Colin. And I will say good morning as well. It's exciting to be part of today's discussion with mayors, state legislators, and representatives from FEMA Mitigation and Resilience. And I want to especially thank Eric Letvin, the FEMA Deputy Assistant Administrator for Mitigation, and his team, as well as the Intergovernmental Affairs Office, for all their assistance in making today's crucial conversation possible. On September 15th of this year, the Mississippi River Cities and Towns Initiative hosted over 50 United States mayors from all 10 created MRCTI city-state task force. The task force is populated by state legislators and mayors to coordinate and address issues that directly link cities and states, such as the new Resilience Revolving Loan Fund, which we'll call RRF, or safeguarding tomorrow through ongoing risk mitigation, the Storm Act, which we are gathered today to discuss specifically. Several of the mayors and state legislators have agreed to join the task force are with us this morning, including my co-chair of the task force, Missouri State Representative Dan Shaul. And I would like to give the mayors an opportunity to introduce themselves and their state legislators this morning joining the call today. And we can let's go from south to north. I hate to go, next time we do north to south, beginning with Mayor Belinda Constant. Mayor.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. I am happy to be here, of course. As Mayor just stated, I am Mayor Belinda Constant from the city of Gretna, Louisiana. Actually, my state legislator, State Rep Joe Marino, was supposed to be on with us, and that's what I was trying to check to see if he was actually on with us. I'm not sure if he is yet or not, but he is absolutely 100% supportive of the efforts of MRCTI and the things that we're trying to do here. So I just want to say thank you to our friends at FEMA for this opportunity.
Well, I'll go next, I guess, Mayor Kraft. I'm Sharon Weston Broome, and I'm the Mayor President of Baton Rouge and East Baton Rouge Parish, and I've had the privilege of recently serving the outgoing co-chair of MRCTI.
And Mayor Kraft, I don't think Mayor Simmons is on yet.
Okay, do we have Mayor Smith?
No, I think we can go to Mayor Fox.
Okay, I know Mayor Fox on. We've already been fishing this morning.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bob Fox, Mayor of Cape Girardeau. My state rep, Wayne Wallingford, and my state senator, Holly Rader, could not be on this morning, but they are both supportive of all of our efforts and will help Representative Shaul get this thing going in Missouri.
Perfect. All right. I'm Mayor Phil Stang from the city of Kimmswick, and I'm also the Missouri chair of MRCTI. And I'd like to introduce my state rep, who has graciously become the co-chair of this task force, State Representative Dan Shaul. Dan?
Thank you, Mayor. I look forward to earning your praise for what we're going to do here. I worked with Senator Wallingford and Senator Rader, Mayor Fox, good people. It's nice to work with us now, Representative Wallingford in the House. And I think between the three of us on the legislative side, we can help Missouri get to where they need to be.
Okay. And Mayor Kraft, I know we can go to Mayor Baton next.
Yep.
Okay.
How are you doing? Mike Baton with the City of Riverdale. Bob Gallagher is not able to be here today. He's with the City of Bettendorf, but the two of us live here in the Quad Cities, right on the Mississippi River. And there are a number of bi-state issues that we look forward to speaking with you about here in the near future.
Okay. And Mayor Reynolds?
All right, great, thanks. Mitch Reynolds, I'm the mayor of the city of La Crosse at the confluence of three rivers, including the mighty Mississippi, and look forward to working here in the future to address a number of issues that we're facing.
Okay. Any other mayors online? If not, thank you, mayors and legislators. And I think we would like to give our friends at FEMA an opportunity to introduce all the folks joining with them today on their side.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure. I'm Eric Letvin, again, Deputy Assistant Administrator, and I see a lot of familiar faces here. It's a pleasure to spend some time with you today. I'll turn it over to, there's a few other folks from FEMA here, including my boss, Catherine Fox, who will keep me honest. Catherine, I'll turn it over to you, and maybe Angie, then Caroline.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for the opportunity to come join you. Appreciate Eric taking the lead and making sure that we are building this partnership with you all, and certainly looking forward to continuing to work with you all as we start to understand the implementation of Storm Act. I know it's something that this group pushed really hard for. It's a new area for us, and certainly one that I think can help all of us fill some gaps in the resilience space. So looking forward to the discussion. Thanks, everyone. And Angie, I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Angie Gladwell. I'm Director of FEMA's Hazard Mitigation Assistance Division, which houses all of our mitigation grant programs. So again, really excited about this opportunity to develop this new program and to hear from you.
Okay, anybody else?
Hi, I'm Caroline Walls. I'm with FEMA's Office of Environmental Planning and Historic Preservation. Our director, Kristen Fontenot, couldn't join us today, so I'm listening in for her.
Okay. Does that
complete? That might be it. I don't know if we have anyone from Intergovernmental Affairs on or not. I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Well, excellent. Look, thank you all for being here this morning. And I'm now going to recognize my co-chair, Missouri State Representative Dan Shaul, for some brief context regarding our partnership with states and cities on resilience. But I want to invite both mayors and legislators to please feel free to jump in, chime in on any of the topics as we go through. And again, we just want to foster some dialogue here to get some ideas out and discuss maybe some of the things that we've experienced with the different programs. So Representative Shaul.
Thank you very much, Mayor Kraft. I promise not to filibuster here, but we are getting ready to start the filibuster season, so I'll try not to practice. But it's an honor to be co-chairing the MRCTI City State Task Force with my friends and colleagues up and down the river. It is difficult to overstate how important and impactful the partnered work between states and cities can be, especially in regards to resilience. Since 2005, the state of Missouri incurred no less than $20 billion in actual losses, punctuated most recently by the incredibly expensive drought in 2012 and the flood of 2019. During the session that we held on September 15th that Mayor Kraft mentioned, mayors and state legislators consulted with the private and public sectors on implementing the Storm Act. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Council of Infrastructure Financing Authorities, and the National Emergency Management Association and the Maryland Emergency Management Agency were all part of the dialogue. Of course, what makes this morning's meeting particularly urgent is the inclusion of $500 million for the Storm Act in the newly enacted bipartisan infrastructure bill over the next 5 years. $500 million over the next 5 years. Now that we have the Storm Act as law and funded through those 5 years, we as states need to partner and position with our cities for implementation on the ground. For further detail on the priorities of the act, I would like to turn this over to the Mayor Mitch Reynolds of La Crosse, Wisconsin. Mayor Reynolds.
I appreciate that, Representative Shaul. Now, as folks from FEMA may be aware, my Senator Ron Johnson, who was chair of the Senate Homeland Security Committee at the time, led Senate consideration of the Storm Act. And certainly we were very happy here in La Crosse to work with him in such a bipartisan fashion to develop and help move that bill to the finish line. As outlined by the public, we wanted to make sure our interpretation of the priorities of the Resilience Revolving Loan Fund matched the direction FEMA is considering. Priority projects from states to receive an RF capitalization grant include projects increasing resilience of natural and built infrastructure, projects involving a partnership between 2 or more states, projects that take into account regional impacts of multiple hazards, including drought on river basins, river corridors, micro watersheds, and macro watersheds, and projects that implicate the resilience of major economic sectors or critical national infrastructure. And that includes ports, global commodity supply chain assets, et cetera. Now here in La Crosse, we get the double whammy of river flooding and flash flooding due to where our city sits at the confluence of 3 rivers, as well as the foot of the bluffs here in the driftless region. So our concentration on flood abatement and developing mitigation strategies pretty much leads every long-term infrastructure discussion. So, this year we witnessed another summer of historical rainfall, and that brought plenty of flooding to our streets and homes and all of that damage. And that led us to a better understanding of how situationally challenged we are based on the age and capacity of our current stormwater infrastructure. So we'll look to be utilizing RRF as a tool to help us basically adapt to an environment of ever increasing rain and flash flood hazard by, again, increasing our pace of infrastructure investment to help the catastrophic damages to all of our property owners here in La Crosse. And as we look to physically remove property owners from our floodplain areas or strengthen our levee system, RRF can provide us with a path toward resiliency in that respect as well.
Would any of our FEMA representatives like to respond to some of Mayor Reynolds' comments and things that he's experienced?
Yeah, Colin, you want me to kind of just maybe walk through where we are and where we think we're going to go for Storm Act?
That would be great.
Yeah, so let me start off by saying right now, a lot of you, may have projects that you want to submit for mitigation. We have a lot of, with the Storm Act is a Mitigation Revolving Loan Fund, so that's something completely new for FEMA. Obviously, it's not new for the federal government. I mean, I think this legislation is modeled off of, what the EPA has had for decades now for like the Clean Water Act, water and wastewater treatment plant upgrades, and we have already talked to EPA. Our intention is not to recreate the wheel, but learn from our federal partners that have already implemented a revolving loan fund. So we have reached out to EPA, but right now I just want to highlight some of the opportunities that you have in front of you if you have projects. So the President Biden signed in August adding mitigation to the COVID disaster declarations that occurred in every state and territory and many tribal areas. So what essentially we negotiated with the White House was 4% of the entire COVID response dollars would turn on the hazard mitigation grant program for those typical mitigation projects that, you know, if you were to receive a flood, all those kind of projects, I think, that were just mentioned, stormwater and levees, flood walls, elevating, acquiring homes, all of those drainage projects. Those are the kind of projects that we fund all the time with our pre and post disaster mitigation grant program. So it's up on our website. I can provide Colin a list, but let me briefly just state for the mayors here how much money that is for some of your states. So in Iowa, that's like $19.5 million. Louisiana, $78 million. Mississippi, almost $26 million. Missouri, $25 million. And Wisconsin, almost $33 million. So I just want to put things in context. I mean, Storm Act is a new program, and you know, with EPA decades ago in the 80s, it started off in the hundreds of millions of dollar range, and over time, as the interest accrued, it's now billions. So Storm Act was $500 million over 5 years across 50 states, territories, and eligible tribes. So if everyone were to apply in year one, you know, obviously you're looking at only a few $1 million per state. You know, right now, obviously the funds will accumulate. We have funds for 5 years in this new Storm Act as part of the infrastructure bill that was signed 2.5 weeks ago. But you all have those funds that I just, the funding levels that I just shared with you. Your state emergency management offices are currently working through trying to figure out how to spend those funds, like who would be eligible, what kind of projects they want to fund. So I just want to remind you that there are dollars right now. That application period closes in August of next year. So this is a great time. If you haven't talked to your state emergency management office, a question you may want to consider asking them is, what are your plans for spending the funds that were just recently made available from the COVID declarations? I think the states are currently working on their administrative plans right now, so this is a good time to ask that question. In addition to that, we currently have an open application period for the Building Resilient Infrastructure Communities, or BRIC grant program. We have $1 billion this year that is available for BRIC funding. Our application period closes at the end of January. Now, I know that there was some stress last year. I think it was Missouri, Colin, and some other states have state deadlines that may be coming up really soon, or perhaps have already passed. So again, there's $1 billion that is a competitive program. Each state also receives $1 million kind of as a set aside, kind of guaranteed money to help with building codes or hazard planning if you need to update your local hazard plan. So each state gets $1 million with BRIC, and then the rest of it goes into a competitive pot. And also for flood mitigation assistance, those are for insured policyholders who typically want their homes acquired or elevated. There's also an open application period for a flood mitigation assistance program. So I just want to put things in context with Storm Act, which is going to, I'll talk about that shortly. But let me pause there on the grant side. If you have any questions there, I just want to make sure you're all aware of what is available to you right now for projects. You know, right now, the BRIC and FMA deadlines are in January. The hazard mitigation grant program mitigation dollars for the COVID declarations, those deadlines are coming up in August. We do expect some of the states will request, I think they can request up to 2 180-day extensions from them, from our regional administrator. I expect many of the states will request a deadline, which would push it farther down the road. But let me stop there before I talk about storm. If you have any questions about the dollars that are available right now for projects.
Mayor Kraft, Representative Shaw, I think Mayor Broome had a specific question that she wanted to get in today, and I know she has to depart at 10 Central. So I didn't know if this might be a good time to recognize her for her question.
Sure. Mayor Broome?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mayor Kraft. You know, we worked hard to ensure that Section 205 of the Stafford Act made it into the final version of Louisiana communities, in particular, are on the front lines of increasing disasters. And so I will just say it is truly our hope that RRF can be accessible both for large and small communities alike, and certainly that our vast water infrastructure networks can qualify for resilience spending. Let me just say in particular, my city recently received funding or passed funding, I should say, for a new stormwater management plan. Since the 1,000-year rain event that my city sustained in 2016, we have been working to regulate and manage water better. But we're hoping the resilience capacities would qualify under the RFF. The Stormwater Master Plan has really laid the foundation for resiliency planning here in Baton Rouge. It's surveying every drainage way in the parish, giving our local government a comprehensive look at how water moves throughout our community. And the data collected is currently being used to identify maintenance work and projects to sustain our drainage needs. And so once this is complete, we will be able to use this data to create long-term, sustainable, and resilient plans for our drainage ways. This is the first project that's ever took place like this in Baton Rouge, and we believe it will empower us to move away from the piecemeal approach or solutions of the past. A comprehensive approach to drainage infrastructure is exactly what the RRF has in mind. And I feel very confident that when our partners at the federal, state, and local level work together to utilize these dollars in a practical way, that it will directly benefit our constituents. And we believe that the RFF program has the potential to really build resiliency through strategic planning in thousands of municipalities just like Baton Rouge. So, Mr. Lettvin, I will say I had more of a comment than a question, but certainly if you want to chime in on that, I think we would welcome your feedback.
Sure. I was just looking at my other screen here. So let me talk about one of the changes to remind you that is really exciting that Congress already did 3 years ago with the Disaster Recovery Reform Act. So what essentially that did, again, I'm talking about the grants, so I'll talk about Storm Act in a second. The post-disaster mitigation grants, so like the dollars that I just said were available in Louisiana with the COVID declarations, that's $78 million. Previously, only 5% of that money could be used to help manage it. And that would also be for mitigation planning or what have you. The management costs were changed, whereas it doubled at the state level from 5 to 10%, and it included 5% at the local level. So of that $78 million, about $3.5 of that $1 million is available at the local level to help you essentially administer and work through those grants. And hazard mitigation planning, a lot of the activities that you just mentioned there are eligible to be done through our mitigation grant program. So what you just described, Mayor Broome, would be eligible right now for funding with those hazard mitigation grant program dollars. Let me transition to Storm Act, the revolving loan fund. I'm looking at the bill here. It does say in the legislation, up to 10% of the capitalization grant can be used to enable local governments to implement zoning and land use changes focused on, and it goes into a whole bunch of things there. So, stormwater planning and things of that nature. So up to 10% of the revolving loan funds could be used for those kind of activities. And that's written into the law. So that's, how we would administer that is one of those challenges that, we're gonna have to provide guidance to you all on how to do that, but that's actually written into the legislation.
Well, thank you so much for that feedback. I appreciate it.
Mayor Stang, would you like to go next?
I certainly would, man. Thank you. Congress intended the RRF to be considerably less administrative demand for states to apply for and manage. The Storm Act lists a few items to consider when applying, including an assessment, a description, proposal, and congruence to a hazard mitigation plan. But there is little detail in order to keep these demands manageable and rather lighter than they may otherwise be pursuant to a traditional FEMA grant program. As Mayor Broome said, it is absolutely critical we make the RRF accessible to small communities like mine, as well as larger cities and everyone in between. Many traditional FEMA grant programs are out of our reach. Both Mayor Kraft and Mayor Constant can share more on their direct experiences.
Mayor Constant, you want to go first?
Yes, I can. In fact, if I could, I want to acknowledge my state rep, Joe Marino, who has joined the Zoom panel this morning. He just got out of court. So thank you, Rep Marino, for being here and for your support. And I truly appreciate it. I guess I can share a little bit of the experience that we've had here in the city relative to pre-disaster mitigation grant that we are trying to finalize as we speak. And I think the message really for me is, and I think basically, and Colin and I just have discussed this, is the constraints and just the rigorous application process and the problems with small communities and the financial burden for small communities. I am the mayor of the city of Gretna, Louisiana. Our population is right under 20,000. And so we're considered mid-sized city for Louisiana, but truly a small city relative to the nation. And we have been working probably since early 2020 on a pre-disaster mitigation grant with FEMA and GOSEP and working with our engineers. And I think what I want to highlight and what I'm hoping that we can resolve with the RRF is the amount of money that we've spent on engineering just to be able to get into the game, right? For a city my size to be able to, or to have to obligate somewhere between $500,000 plus in engineering cost and H&H modeling is truly a heavy lift and a burden for a small community. So we have been engaged in this process, as I said, for the better part of 2 years. And of course, between COVID and pandemic and Hurricane Ida, of course, our timeline has just marched on, right? And we're 2 years into the process almost. And still, we don't know the end result of the grant. We've got high expectations and things are absolutely moving in the right direction. But it's the obligation of having the demand of so much engineering on the front end just to put in an application. So I think that was truly what I wanted to express this morning as far as what we're dealing with here in the city as a small city trying to come to the table and compete, because that's what it is. It's a competitive process. And so, Mr. Letton, I just want to say thank you for giving us the opportunity this morning. And I know your ears are open and you're hearing what we're saying. We appreciate your support. And at this time, I want to turn it over to Mayor Kraft, who's going to speak a little bit about his experience with the BRIC grant.
Thank you, Mayor Constant. And I also want to thank Mr. Letman also and his group. But Mayor Constant's exactly right. It's a lot of effort in trying to put these BRIC programs together. We thought we had a solid one. We had of course, like she said, we have to have engineers do the engineering on these projects that we need. And I have a unique example of what just the BRIC application. Our engineers told us, "Oh, y'all are a lot. This is prime example of what a town like you would need." For example, when we think about the Mississippi River, we think of flooding from by either overtopping a levee or a stream backing up or having flooding. Our town floods from underneath. We have seepage water, and that seepage water, we're right here on the Mississippi River. And that seepage water inundates our wastewater system to where we're processing river water instead of our wastewater from our citizens. Then storm runoff, it somehow creeps into it as well. But when you put that seepage water in 2018, we had over 200 plus days of above flood stage for Vidalia. So there was a lot of seepage water in our town. And we were having to, our station will only handle so much. And we made an application to just increase our lift capacity at our lift station to our ponds, and from our ponds to our affluent back to the Mississippi River. And because if we can't, our system can't handle it, we would lose our ponds, our sewer ponds, or we have to discharge it into a natural a canal that's natural and on a scenic river, and that's not good either. And we thought we hit all the markers, for example, on that first BRIC, and we did it, and we didn't even get a look or a sniff. And those kind of things, when you put that much effort and have that much need, you go like, you scratch your head and go like, what do you have to do? Is it worth the effort if you're not going to even get maybe a mention of where you're at in something, or why should we just throw our hands up? It's kind of frustrating, really, to do those. And I'm gonna say one more thing that we've got. We're working on just with FEMA and the state, of course, from the freeze of last year. We're just having just some things that the hoops you have to jump through to do some things, and the work you do. We appreciate all the work, but sometimes it gets really burdensome on your staff to have to do all the meetings and extensive information you've got to give. And I understand it, but there's got to be some way that we could work better through some of these things. And I'd like to hear some response to some of those things.
Yeah, boy, there's a lot there. And thank you for those comments. And we've heard a lot of comments similar to that. And let me react to that a little bit. Yeah, I'm a civil engineer, and I've done a lot of H&H modeling. So I hear you, Mayor Constant. I know exactly exactly what you're going through. First of all, with BRIC, let me start there. We were 7 times oversubscribed. We had $500 million. We had $3.5 billion of applications. So there were a lot of really good applications that unfortunately we weren't able to fund. This year we have $1 billion. It's double. So we hope that funding line will go much farther down. Both under BRIC and also our post-disaster hazard mitigation grant program, a lot of that engineering analysis that you need for a project is actually, we can fund that through it's called advanced assistance, where you can put in an application saying, hey, we think we have an idea for a project, but we need some funds, FEMA, to help us perform that H&H analysis. That is an eligible activity under both our pre and post-disaster mitigation grant programs. Again, in addition, as I mentioned before, with the post-disaster, hopefully I'm not confusing you, kind of jumping around programs, but with the post-disaster mitigation grant programs, that's $78 million that Louisiana has, $3.5 million is available to help you with those types of activities, working with your public works, your engineers, your consultants to help you with applications and application development. So a lot of those activities are fundable. Yes, it was unfortunate we weren't able to fund more projects in BRIC last year. We are hoping the funding line will go farther down this year Brick. And with the application process, Mayor Stang, with regard to the revolving loan fund, Storm Act that we're getting ready to set up, we did have a meeting with some Hill staffers just a couple of weeks ago. And what you expressed to me was exactly what we heard from the Hill, from the members, is like, FEMA, you need to make this program easier and not burdensome, and get the dollars out there and reduce the complexity with the revolving loan fund program. And so we heard that loud and clear from the members. And it's our intention to, we have to follow the law. Obviously, there's a lot of things in the law. The state has to submit an application, and there's a bunch of things that have to be in that application. So we have to follow the law, but our intention is to make this as easy as possible and reduce the burdens on local government for applying for a mitigation loan fund under Storm Act. One thing I do want to flag, so if you have not talked to it says in the law right here that the State Emergency Management Office would be responsible for administering the Storm Act. So the state has to submit an application to us. So we have an obligation to put out guidance and materials to call it a notice of funding opportunity that would allow the state to, we have to outline what the program requirements are under the law, and then the state would submit an application back to us. And then once we get it approved, we would fund the state, we'd capitalize the states, and then the state would run that particular program. One of the things in there I just want to flag for you is that the environmental historic preservation requirements under endangered species or historic buildings or the National Environmental Policy Act, it states in there that the states could assume that responsibility. And frankly, we would love for the states to do that. So a lot of that, Mayor Stang, a lot of those requirements that are required by law could be delegated to the states if the states were to take that on. But I'll share with you right now, we actually allow that right now with our mitigation grant programs that I just shared with you. Only one state has taken us up on that, and that is Florida. And that's only at a limited basis. So FEMA still is doing all of the environmental requirements for our mitigation grants out of headquarters and our regional offices. The states could assume that, and that would, I think, perhaps speed things up. But only one state emergency management office is currently taking us up on that. So that may be a conversation, consider having with your states. The law does allow for the states to assume a lot of the functions that FEMA would normally assume, a lot of it in the environmental historic preservation space. So let me stop there. And if you have any reactions to my reactions to your comments.
Any questions from me and the mayors?
I think that was helpful.
Okay, good. Well, look, moving forward, we wanted to reflect on the intended use plans as so called out in Section 205, Part G of the Storm Act. And these plans are only required for states that have entered into an agreement with FEMA through the RRF program. And we would think these plans do not necessarily need to be in place to qualify for a capitalization grant outright. That said, we understand that FEMA may require states to show some level of plan or consideration of a plan upon applying for a capitalization grant. But again, we would recommend this requirement not be overly burdensome. And we wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a great comment. And the bill was signed into law 2.5 weeks ago. We do have, we have hired a contractor on board. We have 2 sprints is what we call them at FEMA, where we have these big all-day planning sessions. We have 2 of those planned this month. We're going to begin hiring staff. Now, this was signed into law last December. Now we finally have funds to implement it. So we're going to be hiring. We're having a bunch of implementation meetings. And Mayor Kraft, that is an implementation question. How can we push out those funds? Do we have to have the intended use plan submitted? Unfortunately, I can't answer that right now, but our team is here, Catherine and Angie and Caroline, and that's one of the things that it's a good comment that we'll take into these design sprints and see if we can streamline the process of getting the dollars out. We still have to comply with the law, but if there's a way we can make it happen, we'll certainly look into that.
Thank you very much.
Senator Moreno, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. Yeah, this is Joe Marino, Louisiana State Representative. The Storm Act establishes the priority activities through which the capitalization grants should be awarded, which did not include evaluating the ability of the project to repay the loan. It's been suggested that FEMA develop a cost-benefit analysis or a scoring system in order to award grants to states whose projects have the best ability to repay the loan. We believe we would consider this evaluation to be within the purview of the states alone in evaluating their own project submissions without the need for additional scoring coming from FEMA, unless it is in the form of a suggested best practices for states to implement via Section 205 Part B2. And this flexibility would be especially important for my state, since we have more microbasins than any other state in the nation, and the need for dexterity to address seepage, named storms, and river flood events from both the channel and backwater areas. So that's the FEMA response.
No, it's an excellent comment. We will pull that. Thank you for that feedback. We'll pull that into our design sprints and see if we can, how we implement D2 and the prioritization. We will certainly take that comment into our program design.
Thank you.
Eric, this is Representative Shaul again. I appreciate your comments about following the law, even though sometimes it's not, it doesn't seem right, but I appreciate you doing that. Being a legislator myself, sometimes the law just gets in the way. I probably shouldn't have said that, should I, Colin? You're going to reconsider me being co-chair of this. I can see that coming.
You can't get out of it that easy.
This next topic is probably one of the most consequential we will discuss this morning. To date, only the state of Maryland has passed what could be termed as a Resilience Revolving Loan Fund Enabling Act. Through enactment of the Resilient Maryland Revolving Loan Fund, Senate Bill 901, the Maryland law codifies much of what the federal RRF requires, linking operation of the fund to the state hazard mitigation plan, and officially designating administration of the fund within the Maryland Emergency Management Agency. We do not consider it essential that FEMA require all eligible entities pass an enabling act into law. However, it is recommended FEMA set guidelines for states, including certain vital items in the enabling act or policy, which may include, but not limited to, ensuring the revolving fund has special exemptions for state departments of treasury to ensure the fund does not close or automatically sunset. Also sets out a priority for incentivizing natural infrastructure deployment to address resilience through the development of natural solutions. And explaining the RRF can be issued by a state with zero interest. And I'm pretty sure that's zero interest on the loan, not zero interest in the program. So, Eric, I'll let you tell me how the law is going to work with that and what your response would be on that.
Yeah. So again, we're taking detailed notes on all of your. You have some great comments, prepared statements. I'm pretty familiar. It was actually my state representative here in Maryland who helped get that through the state legislature, and that was, I think, really directed at helping Ellicott City here, who flooded. Had two 500-year floods, and they're trying to fund about $60 million of projects, and are looking for any and all sources. And in terms of how the state programs would work within the federal program, again, that's something we need to work through. So, if you could, we took notes, but perhaps Colin, if you have some prepared comments or statements that you'd like to send over to us, that would be very helpful as we're building out the program.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we're going to follow this up with an official letter. And but of course, we want to wanted the letter to be informed by what you guys are feeling and your points of view, and the feedback you've provided this morning already, Eric, is fantastic. So, yep, we will follow that back with you. Mhm.
Yeah, you guys are asking some great questions, and I'm not trying to dodge them. It's just that we're still digesting the bill and what we can and can't do and how we'd set that up. And quite frankly, this is something completely new for FEMA. We don't have a revolving loan fund, and we're going to be asking these questions of our federal partners, like how does the EPA do this, and how do they tackle these kind of issues? And we want to learn on what has worked in the past and not make something that's overly complicated or burdensome. And how do we get the dollars out there to the communities that need them?
Great. Well, Mayor Kraft, if I could go ahead and speak for Mayor Gallagher, because Bob wasn't able to make it today. I appreciate it. Mr. Levin, thank you very much. My name is Mike Baden. I'm the mayor of Riverdale, Iowa. It's a thriving metropolis of 385 people located on the banks of the Mississippi here in the Quad Cities. But Bob Gallagher and I both last week were at a opening of a new interstate bridge across the Mississippi River, the Interstate 74 bridge, which was really a great example of cross-state participation between the states of Iowa and Illinois. So what we'd like to do is, what I'd like to do is, first off, thank FEMA and your team for going through all of these items with us. And I know it's been a lot of stuff, but we appreciate your time. But both Mayor Fox and I will be rounding out our topics, talking about interstate cooperation and interstate projects. That bridge that we were on is, like I said, $1 billion project. It took 10 years. It involved 3 counties. It involved 2 states. It involved about 19 different communities. And we really learned an important lesson with that project, and that is that many hands make for light work. So we're hoping that that lesson can be shared with FEMA and the RRF program. We're curious if there's a way that the RRF can be accommodating to interstate partnerships that will help prioritize those partnerships, wherever practical. We think this is especially the case in getting non-governmental and organizational involvement. So not just cities and states and counties, but other parties as well. And we had that certainly happening here in the Quad Cities. So let me ask you this. It's a pretty straightforward question. Do you foresee creating incentives in the guidelines that will motivate cross-state applications and try to encourage kind of this sense of partnership, both between states and between municipalities, but also with the private sector?
Well, yeah, thank you, Mayor Bowden, for the question. Let me start again with the grants. MRCTI came to us several years ago and said, FEMA, you currently don't allow for a multi-state application for a grant. And we actually changed our guidance to allow for that, recognizing that obviously projects happen on both sides of the river in multiple states. So currently right now with our grants, you can certainly do a multi-state application. That in terms of the revolving loan fund, that's one of the things I think we need to work through. What incentives could we allow under the law? The way that the law is written, each state would have to submit an application. So if you had a project like that that would cross state boundaries, we'd have to work through that. So what happens if one state applies and the other state doesn't? We would obviously need all the states to apply and become part of the program. And once they do that, how do we incentivize those types of projects? I don't think there's anything in the law that would not allow that to happen. So we would certainly want to encourage that, just like we do under our grant programs. How we would incentivize that is a good question for us to bring into our design sprints to consider.
This is Mayor Fox of Cape Girardeau, Missouri. As we close out our conversation this morning, one final topic we want to mention with you is the need for interagency collaboration, both at the federal and at the state level. During our task force meeting in September, we talked with a national organization that represents the state Revolving Loan Fund managers for wastewater and drinking water. Their recommendations and insight have been very helpful in platforming all of the things we should be thinking about and considering. As a city that has made significant use of SRFs, I can attest to the effectiveness of that program and its accessibility. Is FEMA pursuing a similar outreach with the EPA for guidance and cooperation?
Yes, we already have, and we intend to. I mean, they've been doing this for decades. So EPA and potentially other agencies like Treasury or SBA, we want to learn from how they run a revolving loan fund. Like we'd have to create to be honest with you, we'd have to talk about how do you actually apply? Like what is the electronic system that you all would enter your applications into at the state level? You know, what are the questions we would have with EPA? Like maybe we just use their software for this. Like rather than creating something our own, maybe we would just use their tools. So those are the kind of conversations that we're having. Again, not reinventing the wheel and learning from our federal partners that have been doing this successfully for many years. So yes, we have reached out to EPA already, and they're going to be a real big partner with us going forward.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Letman. Well, this is going to conclude all of our topics for today. And again, I want to thank everybody that was part of the dialogue. And moving forward, can our friends at FEMA share any kind of estimated timeline in drafting the guidance and what is the immediate next steps will be?
Yeah, so let me walk through real rough timeline. So I mentioned, you know, in the next 3 months, we're having 2 design sprints. We already have a contractor. We're going to be meeting with our interested stakeholders. We're going to begin to hire staff. We're going to be providing, I'd say in the 6-month timeline, technical assistance to eligible revolving loan fund entities. That would be at the state level. And then probably in the 8 to 12-month timeframe, development and solicitation of a notice of funding opportunity. And that step will include communication plans and messaging to, you know, key internal and external stakeholders like yourself. So I'd say for development of the initial guidance, again, this is a real rough estimate, 2.5 weeks in there, probably be 8 to 10 months to get that notice of funding opportunity, you know, worked up, and we'll have a lot more, I think, in that time frame.
All right. Well, we're coming up on an hour, and we will now close our discussion today and take what we've learned and hopefully place it in an informed official letter from the mayors and legislators to FEMA and with our listed recommendations. And I would like to thank everyone for all your time and attention today. Especially want to thank the state legislators for their leadership. Hope you have a wonderful Christmas season. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. God bless.
And Mayor Kraft, just
I want to say thanks to Colin for putting this together. They've done a great job with it.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Leffen, too.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Baton.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to State Rep Marino. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Merry Christmas to everybody.
Merry Christmas.
And Eric, we'll connect with you and your team, and I mean, I took a bunch of notes myself, and your comments were very helpful. We understand you're early in the process, totally. We sort of wanted to get this conversation in sooner rather than later, so that we, you know, it's on the table as you guys begin to start to answer and craft solutions to all of the things unanswered by the bill itself. As Representative Shaw said, get the bill out of the way, which I love. That was great. I couldn't have said it better myself. But we'll follow up with an official listing of all these things, and hope to work closely with your team moving forward. I guess that was sort of a follow-up, Eric. If I may, Mayor Kraft, will there be opportunities for partners to engage in the process moving forward as you move towards next summer?
Yeah, potentially. So if you have, you know, Colin, all of your, it's great for us to receive all these all this feedback. This is a good time as we're working through this. We can consider all these different points. If you have something that you want to propose in terms of a, kind of a better rhythm of engagement, please let us know. If you want to have like some check-ins from time to time, there will certainly be documents and guidance that we put out that will be, open for comment. What that is and when is still working through, but yeah, we intend to make it a public process. And we really welcome your feedback.
Okay, great. Our mayors will be in Washington, DC, March 8th, 9th, and 10th for our Capitol meeting, pandemic permitting. So hopefully that may be an opportunity right on the horizon for us to work with you and Catherine and the team on getting an update and, staying close.
I think that sounds like a great, we'll have a lot more to share, I think, by March 8th in terms of milestones and guidance and updates. So I look forward to that, Colin.
Okay, great. Mayor Kraft, Representative Shaw, that's all I had. Thank you again so much for leading this.
Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.